And that's when I began to understand it's not easy and it's a struggle. But I felt betrayed in that kind of peculiar twist of, what's inadequate in me that you couldn't trust me with who you are. At Union Seminary, and you've heard me tell the story before, that it was at Union Seminary where I really began to process these issues and to come out in my own way of a new understanding of both our faith, the Bible, and what it means for people to be, gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgendered. And that was 26 years ago that I went to Union Seminary, and I'm still learning. So I returned this past week for alumni days, union days, and they always have a conference attending those alumni days. And the conference this year was Sex and the Church. And when they opened the conference, they said, now I see that we've got a spectacularly large attendance this year. I hope you weren't confused thinking it was sex in the church. This is a conference on sex and the church. And I was particularly interested in attending because one of the panelists and presenters was Deborah Hafner. How many of you remember the name Deborah Hafner? She wrote the book, A Time to Heal, Protecting Children and Ministering to Sex Offenders. And it was her book and her consultation with us that helped us through our season of struggle. And so she was presenting again, and she's done a study. She runs the Institute for Sexual Morality and Justice. And she did a study on seminaries to discern how well seminaries prepare potential clergy to deal with issues of sexuality in the church. All of them. And found that all of them failed. Even my own very, very progressive seminary gave me no preparation. I said, what I learned in what we call the pit. Down there in the coffee pit where the students meet and struggle and talk about the lecture and wrestle around theological issues. That's where I learned what I learned, not in class. So the curricula of most seminaries don't begin to prepare the clergy for the issues that people bring to them in the pews. Whether it's sexuality in marriage or in singlehood or homosexuality or any of the issues that we struggle with. They said, for example, if you have an intersex child that comes to your Sunday school and you got boys over here and girls over there, where do they go? Issues that we had not thought about. So the conference was very educational. So at the panel, I had an opportunity to ask a question. And I asked them, how do we strike the balance? And I told them about our Coming Out Sunday. I said, we have a Coming Out Sunday. I mean, the other reason it's one of my favorite days, it's the only day I get to do an altar call. So, But I told them about our Coming Out Sunday and what we do. And I said, how do we strike the balance between encouraging people to be their whole selves with us? To overcome that sense of betrayal. Can you be all of who you are here at Pilgrim Church and come out to us? How do you strike that balance to really call and encourage people to do the right thing? If coming out is a good thing, then is not coming out a bad thing? How do you strike that balance? Between saying to someone, you ought to do this, but we understand if you're not able to. And so one of the panelists said, well, you have to look at yourself. What is it about your church that prevents people from coming out to you? And I said, whoa, look at ourselves. And I think we need to always and continue to look at ourselves and never think more highly of ourselves than we ought. Another good word from the Apostle Paul. So I think that's why I've continually encouraged our LGBT community within Pilgrim to form its own caucus, its own organization, where issues that continue to be raised at Pilgrim Church can have a clear voice from that community. Because sometimes there are issues, amen? And we're all on a path. And wherever you are, you know, I can say it from the perspective of a black person, as liberal as white folks are, every now and then I still go, ugh. So I'm sure it's true with our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters that as good as we try to be as straight allies, there's still those moments when you say, ugh. And sometimes those issues are best worked out in community to say, am I the only one that has encountered this at Pilgrim, or have others encountered it? And to be able to speak to how important or trivial or vital or peripheral those issues might be, so that the community can bring them to the church as a whole. And we might begin to discover why even in Pilgrim folks can't fully come out. Another very, very challenging point that was raised at the conference was this issue that, is it an advance in our culture and in our society where now, you know, and when we talk about this here at Pilgrim too, now science supports this notion that people are born with a particular sexual orientation or gender identity, and that therefore it has been proven that there is no choice. Isn't that a good thing? And why doesn't that just settle the question? And one of the panelists said something very disturbing. He says, not so fast, because our opponents are also looking for that gene. Our opponents are also hoping to find that cause, because their understanding would be, okay, find a cause, find a cure. If science tells us that in that gestational process, at a certain moment when genes and all that stuff are being circulated in the womb, and that at a particular moment when the environment is right, certain things happen, and when those things happen, then that child will be born with a sexual orientation of heterosexual or homosexual, determined by that environment, then all we have to do is give the pregnant woman a patch that will control the hormonal process, and then there'll be no more gay gene. So, just when we thought we had found a way to settle the argument, it gets even more disturbing. And that's when I go back and I say it with me now. Hasten to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. Please hurry up. So the struggle continues. But it moves us to an even more radical place. Because there was always that thought in the back of my mind when we were going down that road of predetermination that, you know, we are who we are, and therefore we should be able to be who we are. There was always that thought that then, by saying certain folks are determined to live their lives this way, actually takes away the choice of others who choose to live different.